All right, party people in the place to be, vandals, and everybody else out there lurking in the darkness. Today is a very special episode of How Did We Get Here? Because we actually have the artist, the creator, who drew the icon that I've used pretty much for most of the show, right, Joe?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
pretty much. I mean, ever since I've been doing stuff with you, I think that's you might have changed it up once or twice for an episode or two, but it's pretty much been that the whole time.
right, yeah, and that's the cover to issue 2 of his wonderful Hollow Monsters series. But we're gonna go ahead and let him introduce ourselves. We're being a little rude right now. How are you doing this fine day, sir? And tell the people a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I was blown away by that video. Who put that video together? That was awesome.
Yeah, I did that video. It's pretty much a template. Put it together. We had a friend of ours. They did the theme song, so
Yeah,
that's what
I
we
love.
run at the beginning of each episode. Yeah.
I love it. It was sick. The music, the visuals. That was really cool. I mean,
Yeah, we're
I do a lot of visual stuff, but one thing that I don't really get into these days is kind of video work and sort of animations and things. I used to do it, so I understand it. But I just think I can't do everything. You know, there's enough to do
Mhm.
writing and producing and drawing your own comic books. So I just don't go there. But that was really good. I really loved it. It was fucking awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, and one of our friends, Fred, his kid is in this collective in Detroit of just a bunch of kids that just do like graffiti, hip hop, music, clothing, and they put
Mm,
together that jam for us. A few of them got together and made it for us. So, yeah, Johnny and I are really happy with it. We think it's pretty cool.
it is cool. It's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. Always appreciate when creators enjoy the intro clip.
Yeah, you obviously went to some trouble there. That was great. I used to do. I was an animator for a while on like computer games, so I would animate the characters,
Okay.
and that is different from doing that kind of visual video work. But obviously, there's some crossover.
Yeah, that's more
Um,
like montage is what that more
yeah,
is. But you're working probably in like 3D animation, I'm assuming, when you're
yeah,
working in video
yeah.
games, or
It was
yeah,
mostly 3D. I do the odd 2D bit because I started in computer games back when it was, you know, 2D. So
yeah,
you had to do the old pixel work. I used to love doing the pixel work because you could actually paint it. Obviously, you're
okay,
using pixels, but you could actually draw it. And I have a lot of appreciation for sort of pixel artwork now, and it's
yeah,
sort of come back into fashion, hasn't it, with the sort of like animated gifs and things.
yeah, the
So
retro style, yeah,
yeah,
for sure,
yeah,
yeah,
and I love all that stuff. So yeah, but that's pretty different to that kind of video work. But yeah, very cool.
Yeah, you like worked on the Need for Speed games, like right, and SSX Tricky.
Yes, I worked on both of those in different roles. I did some character work, but I also did a lot of environment and Need for Speed was a lot of sort of track design and then sort of building the kind of world to kind of like make sense of the kind of track that the game designers wanted, you know, to sign off on. Try and come up with all kinds of reasons where there'd be like places to hide and jumps and all kinds of like cool kind of gameplay mechanisms that you'd have to try and sort of explain in the environment. I used to really enjoy doing that sort of thing. It was really entertaining, and
where where were you working out of when you were working in video games?
that was when I was in Vancouver. So
That's when you were
it
in
was
Vancouver, eh? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
Electronic Arts.
Yeah.
So they had all the sports games in a sort of big campus up there, and the racing games, and they were always trying to make new original games, but
Mhm.
they would always get canned. So it was quite frustrating because we all get really excited about some new concept, and then it
Yeah,
would just get canned, and we'd make another sports game.
there you go. Yeah, video games, man. That's like where you working? Like when you make a video game, you're a team of how many usually that would work on it roughly?
Oh Jesus! The last game I worked on, at the end of the game, there was about 260 people, which was nuts.
That's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, I think on most of those games back then, you're talking more like 60
Yeah.
people, which
60
is
people.
more manageable.
Yeah.
You can all still know each other. I think when it gets beyond 60, it just becomes very difficult for the game to have a kind of cohesive personality, or for everybody to sort of communicate and be on the same level, or at least it was in my experience. So yeah, that's part of the reason why I stopped doing it, was because it stopped feeling like anything that I had any real artistic or personal input into, and I was getting very frustrated with like my character designs, which is like my main area of kind of specialism. Was all my character designs, all the edges would get knocked off them and they get changed, and they'd just be homogenized and they'd look like all the other character designs that had previously been popular. And what you're trying to do is, obviously with games, because they take like 2 years to make, you're trying to predict the future, what will be popular in 2 years' time. And
because of the production time, right? So
yeah, exactly.
You're trying to stay ahead of the curve. Yeah.
Yeah, I take that very seriously. So part of the reason why I wanted to do Death Sentence was because I just wanted to do my own characters and just have them be the way I wanted them to be, and I just paint them, and no one would tell me that I had to change their hair or their tattoos or anything. So that was quite satisfying, especially when it was popular, because you thought like, yeah, there you go, you see.
Yeah, because the original Death Sentence, the one that Johnny put up there, how long ago did you put that out?
Oh, I started working on it in 2010. I was still working in games then. So I was doing it in my spare time, and like I say, it was partly a little bit of frustration and not having any kind of personal kind of author sort of sense of authorship over the work. And I just wanted to do something that was the way I wanted it to be and the way I wanted it to look, and all that sort of stuff. And I wasn't really expecting anything to come of it, but as it developed, I started to realize that actually I could do that full time. And even then, I wasn't expecting it to be very successful. I was expecting it to be something I could maybe viably do, but not to any great, success or acclaim or anything. I just wanted the satisfaction of it being, the way I wanted it to be, and something that said like my views on the world around me or something. So that's what I did, and then to my surprise, it really took off, and started making decent money out of it, and I've been doing that for the last 13 years.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, I think I just read it maybe a couple years ago, Johnny, because Johnny's the one who put me onto your work. He was
actually it was Richard Morgan.
Was it Richard? Okay,
yeah,
Richard. Yeah,
posted in on our Discord, I believe, that he was reading Death Sentence, and I said, yeah, man, because I have the hardcover and the first couple issues of the first run. I have the London book as well, and I really enjoyed it, and I told Joey to get it, and you got the first book, right, Joe?
Yeah, I read it. I don't know if I got it through Kindle, or I don't remember how I got it, but I think it was through Kindle, because I have a Kindle subscription. So it seems to me that's where I read it. Yeah,
there's 3 books now. So the last book was, all of London was painted by Martin Simmons. And then he painted half of the second book, and then I did all the art for the last half of the third book. Sorry, so there's 3 books altogether, and I've always done the covers. I've always painted the covers, and I would design the characters, initially right at the beginning, just sort of get the sort of general vibe and style of it. And then I've got more into sort of drawing and writing my own stuff in the last few years, just because you have kind of more control over the storytelling, and you can do more interesting and experimental things, because I'm always interested in, how to get like new or interesting effects with, comic book techniques that you can't do in other mediums. So I'm always kind of playing around with that sort of stuff. And I just really enjoy, the visual storytelling side of it. Which is sort of, and then how to sort of get some interesting extra layers with all the sort of text that you add. I think that's the key to making it, cool and interesting stuff.
Do you have a collected edition for Liberty or Death Sentence Liberty?
Yeah, well, all three books are collected into separate graphic novels that are all at least 156 pages. So the last book, Liberty, was collected a few months back, and that's the latest book that we've collected. And then, so you can get those individually from me, or sometime next year. There's a plan that we're going to do like a massive kind of hardback collection of everything.
Nice.
And that won't come out from me. That will come out from Titan. So it'll be in like bookshops and comic shops and stuff. But it'll be expensive because Titan are involved, and they want to make it like a sort of, what do you call it? I don't know, a sort of
the absolute, like a bit oversized there.
Yeah, like a prestige absolute.
Yeah.
I don't think it's oversized, but it's going to be very nice. They've outlined all their plans and stuff. So I'm going to be providing a bit of extra material for that.
Nice.
But yeah, if you just want to catch up with the story, then I mean, all the graphic novels that I print are all very nice. They're all very good quality. I just basically, as you can see, I've got some nice bookshelves here. I just look at my bookshelf and I think, what would actually make this better? So I don't like having any kind of shoddy kind of book that won't last, or isn't satisfying when you hold it or read it. So it's kind of, the contents have got to be really good, but then also the production of the book has got to be really good as well. Everything about it's got to be, just something that makes you happy, basically.
Okay, right. Because I got the PDFs from the Kickstarter for Liberty, but like I didn't know that there was a collected edition. I'm a trade reader, so
yeah. No, a lot of people are, and fair enough. I quite understand because I buy comics as well, and sometimes because I'm a self-employed writer, sometimes I'm a bit skint. So I also like will get the PDFs, or maybe wait till the trade, or I've got a bit more money to spare, so then buy a load of stuff that I'm interested in reading. So I quite understand when people like a thing but they don't want to buy it straight away. I think that's just the way of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a Kickstarter I was looking at this morning, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll get the I saw like the physical copy. I was like, that's not too bad. It was like $18 Canadian. I was like, clicked on it, go through like the skip add-ons or whatever to see how much the shipping is. $30 for shipping. I was like, fuck. I was like, well, I guess I'm going to be getting it digitally.
Yeah. Digital sales are really good now because obviously, the cost of, fuel and everyone's kind of like costs have risen, so shipping's gone up. But so yeah, it's good that digital sales are really healthy. But I always like, if I really like a thing, I like to have a physical copy. And we have a warehouse in the UK, which is where I am based. But we also have a warehouse in Texas.
Nice.
They've got a bigger stock of all my books than I have here. So because it's always been the case that roughly 75% of the readers of Death Sentence have been like America or in the American kind of continent.
Okay.
So yeah, they've got a huge stock of stuff there, and that obviously keeps shipping reasonable in those territories.
Yeah.
So it's only really become a problem for people that are like, in like Russia or Singapore or some of these far-flung places where it doesn't matter where the warehouse is, it's just hard to get it to them. And you just have to pass on whatever the charge is for the shipping to that destination. You can't screw yourself. Yeah. And if people can't afford it, then fair enough, they can get the digital.
And you have a new edition coming up, a new story you're working on that you're going to add to the Death Sentence ethos, right?
Yeah, well, in addition to the new book that Titan are doing, I've been working on a cyberpunk comic for a long time, and I'm drawing and writing it. And it's basically, I tend to work quite a long way in advance. And same with Death Sentence. I mean, I was writing down ideas and sketches for it, a good while before it came out. So with this cyberpunk story, it's basically set in the same world as Death Sentence, but it's 100 years in the future. And it's just a place where I can put all my ideas that I've had about just really cool little science fiction stories. And it's noir, so it's quite grim and gritty. I like sort of Chandler-esque detective kind of stories, so there's that vibe to it. And I think good cyberpunk has that kind of element to it, the detective noir element. I get frustrated sometimes when I try and read, everybody loves Blade Runner, but I try and read things that have a similar vibe, and then they might start off like that, but they very quickly become something different. They sort of expand out, and I think with that sort of fiction, it's very important to keep it kind of claustrophobic in that kind of very sort of grimy, sort of dark, shadowy kind of world. And it sounds like a limitation, but within that limitation, I think it actually makes the storytelling a lot more powerful and interesting if you've got limitations against which the characters and the story cannot, escape. So I've been working on this for a while, and I'm putting a lot of effort into the artwork. There's a few videos on my Facebook of just some of it's all hand drawn, so it's all airbrush and ink and things like that, which does take a little bit longer, but it just gives the work a real kind of texture and sort of cohesion that you don't get with digital. So I'm really excited about it, but I keep changing the name, which isn't helpful, especially when I've prepared all the logos. I've prepared all the logos, but the first 3 books, and then I just thought, actually, I think I want to call it something else. That's really irritating because it means a load more work for me to change all that. So it's not quite ready to be unveiled yet, but the idea with that one is that when it does appear, it will hopefully blow everyone away, because I've been putting a lot of effort into it, both the art and the kind of sort of cohesion of the world behind it and the storytelling.
Are you going to be kickstarting that?
Sorry?
Are you going to be kickstarting that book?
Yeah. I find with all my stuff, it works better if I just do my own publishing first, because that way I can just make it. And that's really the whole reason, like we said at the beginning with the computer games, that's the whole reason I started doing this, is I wanted to just have something that was unique and a bit different, and just the way I wanted it to be, without really worrying too much about what the market was doing or what other people were doing. So that's the trouble with a lot of commercial work, is there's always that moment where someone says oh, of course we'd sell more copies if we did this, and then they reference some other book that's done really well that might be vaguely similar or superficially similar. And I just don't like doing that. I'm trying to create things that are different to what people have seen before, that they'll really love. So obviously, you're working in a cyberpunk genre, you're going to reference, Blade Runner. It's not like I'm reinventing the wheel, but at the same time, I want to genuinely surprise people and have things that are really new and innovative and exciting. So there's no meetings. I don't have to justify any of this stuff to anybody, but the rule is I have to be happy with it myself. So at the moment, I'm not 100% happy with it. I'm still tinkering with things, and when I am happy with it, then it'll appear in a blaze of glory, hopefully, or not. It will sink into ignominy. We'll see. But either way, it'll be the way I wanted it to be, and it's something I'll be proud of, because I don't bring out anything unless it's absolutely my best and I'm happy with it. So that being the case, so far, whenever I've done that, there's always been interest from publishers after the effect that they might want to publish it later. Though as time goes on, it gets less and less persuasive to do that, because you can make, if you're selling yourself nowadays and you've got good channels, as we said earlier, over the years I've built up kind of a little bit of an infrastructure with a warehouse in Texas and so on, you can actually, even though you're selling less, you can make more money doing your own stuff than you can by selling something onto a publisher. And a lot of the terms that publishers come out with are very not what you'd want
not favorable for
not
the
favorable,
creators.
yeah. And of course, most people just sign them because they got no choice and they want to get on in the industry or something. And I don't sign them. I always I spent a year negotiating my death sentence contract, and I walked away from it twice. And in the end, we got a deal where it means I can keep on making the comic and publishing it myself, and they can also publish it, and they make money off it. So we all make money off it, and it's a good contract for everybody. And I wish all contracts for all creators were like that, but it's very hard to do that.
It can be cutthroat at times, right? Companies, stuff like that.
It's so hard. Yeah, I've for a lot of creators, they're sort of like trapped in a sort of cycle of. I mean, obviously, you always hear about the big name, big money guys, but a lot of creators that are well known, they're sort of like trapped in a sort of on a conveyor belt or a running machine of production where they're just sort of like drawing to survive. You know what I mean? And they're not getting the royalties and the kind of like long-term kind of recompense for their work that the quality of it would.
Their heart and like they're just the feeling, their heart and soul is in it, right? Because it becomes more mechanical, more you don't get that same vibe.
Yeah,
for sure.
No one gets into comics to churn out stuff, just for the money. But no one, that would be crazy. But a lot of people end up doing that just because they've got no choice, and that's a great shame because that they've got the talent to really create something wonderful, and that's probably why they got in the industry in the first place. So I find it very useful if you're in a negotiation with a company to just be able to say, look, well, I don't need to do this. I can publish this myself, and if the terms aren't agreeable to everybody, because it's important that companies make money out of the work, and that because otherwise, why are they going to put effort into selling it? So it's not like I don't understand that publishers need to make money and profit from my work. I'm all for that because that means they'll be motivated to go and sell it. So it's just a matter of getting a fair deal for everybody.
The happy medium where like they say in negotiations, if everyone leaves the table unhappy, then everyone's got a fair deal.
Maybe that's the key.
Yeah, that's it. That means everybody got their fair share if everyone leaves the negotiation table unhappy. Earlier you said that your cyberpunk book, you drew it all traditionally, like with airbrush and this. Is all your comic work done that way when you work on it, or have you done stuff in digital as well?
It's a mix, and as time's gone on, I've got more and more into just drawing things traditionally. I prefer it. Obviously, the main reason I'm doing this is because I enjoy it, and I want to create things I'm proud of. And I just enjoy it more when I'm actually sitting at a board using my fingers and my hands on paper and inks and all that kind of stuff. It's more enjoyable. So previously on the last 3 death sentence books, I was drawing it digitally. Okay. And it looks very nice, and you probably couldn't really tell that that it's whether it was hand drawn or digital, but I just found after doing that for 3 issues, I just found it wasn't satisfying me, and also I just felt it was interesting actually, because there's some quite tricky scenes in that book where there's a lot of overhead kind of views of London, and there's like thousands of people rioting through the streets, and that's obviously quite tricky stuff to draw. But I actually enjoyed drawing that part of it more than any other part, and it really suited me because I've always been quite good at understanding and drawing like perspective and figures in action in different from different angles and things. I've got lots of weaknesses as an artist, but that's one of my things that I'm better at. And I just thought, like, man, I'd really just like to do a book that's like full of this stuff. So part of the fun of doing a cyberpunk environment is I can design this like really cool city and draw it from all kinds of angles, and have all this like really kinetic, violent action happening within it, in really fun ways across the page. And I just absolutely love doing that. So it's kind of like every page is like that, really. And then it's the first thing I've done where I've known I was drawing it before I wrote it. With Death Sentence, I wrote the scripts thinking they'd all be drawn by someone else, and that's good because you don't start compromising and writing things that you might be easy to draw or that suit you as an artist. You just tell the best story you can. So I've managed to get past that hurdle, in that I don't give myself easy stuff to draw. Quite the contrary, there's a lot of really tricky things to draw in this new cyberpunk comic. But that's what I'm really enjoying about it, and that kind of excitement comes across on the page. The fact that I've really enjoyed spending a crazy amount of time drawing this kind of city from a bird's eye view or something, and putting loads of details in it and stuff. So yeah, it's just a really fun way of working, and I get a lot more out of it hand drawing it. Obviously, I understand computers because I used to work in computer games, but I've never liked using models or computer models or anything like that in my work. It may be because I understand the industry a bit, but I can always spot a mile off when someone has basically drawn over a 3D model of a building or a car or a person. So and it kind of like sticks out to me like a sore thumb, and it's kind of dead on the page. It might be an amazing rendering, and it might be an incredible angle that someone might not have been able to do if they weren't using 3D models, but I'm just not really interested in it. To me, comics and cartoons are more powerful the more kind of abbreviation and personal kind of style people put into them.
It's almost like a signature or a personality coming out in the page of the creator themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Like lots of the greatest comic artists and cartoonists, they've got very sort of unusual and distinctive styles, and they abbreviate a lot, and it's absolutely nothing to do with like 3D models or all this kind of stuff. So and I'm not a great comic artist, but as time's gone on, I've got better by understanding that the less I rely on kind of props and photo reference and 3D models and things like that, and the more I just draw things, and even if they're not perfect, they've got a lot of kind of passion and kind of emotion and kind of energy into them, the better the work is. So that's what I try and do. And I mean, I haven't used any sort of computer 3D package for, I don't know,
you put
8 years or something. 8 years probably.
Yeah.
You put a lot of emphasis into motion. Like I really love your artwork and your page breakdowns in Hollow Monsters. Like you get really creative with like the way you can have like there's one page where like the guy's walking and like he kind of goes around the corner, but like he walks outside of the gutters of the comic and kind of goes turns around and into the next section of panels. And I love when people do stuff like that, get really creative with the way the panel layouts are done, and it just looks really nice, man. You put a lot of flair into your stuff for somebody that's kind of just gotten into drawing your own comics as well. Like,
no, thanks. I'm really chuffed you liked that, because that's what I really liked about that comic, and that's kind of the point of it, is to do things like that. But it's also about limitations. Like I say, if you don't have rules, you can't break them. So that book is also very rigidly sort of laid out on a basic template of sort of like 9 panels and certain sort of positions for all the breaks between the divisions of the panels that never kind of change. But then, as you said, within that actually means that when you sort of like break those rules and kind of like play around with, having action spill out into gutters, or to sort of play with the borders of the panel and have text or characters kind of like doing things outside the boundary of the panels themselves in kind of innovative ways. It's more powerful because of the fact that it's come from this kind of, the previous scenes have been within this kind of like boundary. So the two things kind of work together. If it was all just the latter, it would kind of lose its effect and it would just be a little bit boring after a while. But in the same way, it would be boring if it was all just 9-panel grids and things. So you've got to have one to sort of get the excitement of the other. And I love doing things like that, but they've always got to serve the story. I don't like gimmicky things that take you out of the world of the characters or the comic or the story. I like things that have an effect, that make the story and make you believe in the story and the characters even more.
Yeah.
So I don't like sort of gimmicky spreads.
One thing you did, like a spread, and is when the two characters start making out, how you characterize like all the memories flooding back from from their time together, from when they're kids leading up to that moment, how all these memories from the past like comes flooding through his mind or their mind while they're making out. I thought that was fantastic. I love those pages. Those were great. I really enjoyed that. The way you did that. Yeah,
that's good to hear. I don't get a lot of feedback from that comic. People always tend to talk to me about Death Sentence or some of my other stuff. So it's great to hear. I mean, that's what I love doing in that comic, and that's the point of it. So I'm glad you kind of got that.
It's my favorite of your work. I got it with the Frenemies Kickstarter, and
yeah.
It was just a add-on, you know what I mean? But it ended up being like my favorite thing that I got out of the whole bundle. It was
I think because I drew and wrote it myself, you can sort of start to play around with these kind of things and experiment a bit. At that point, I was very interested in, the differences between prose storytelling and sort of visual storytelling, and like how you could do innovative things with the two together, as well as there's like a section as well in that comic where it's just all prose for like a page or two, and just sort of like exploring the limits of what all these different techniques can do and stuff. I really enjoyed it, and I thought, this is at least as good or better than Death Sentence, but it just didn't sell anywhere near as much because it hasn't got the kind of like sexy and appealing visuals and the sort of cool characters that Death Sentence has.
Not as action heavy as because Death Sentence is a fairly not overly heavy, but it definitely has a lot of action. People that are into that definitely get that from Death Sentence. But I'll echo Johnny's sentiment. Like, people shouldn't sleep on Hollow Monsters because it was fantastic, especially the beginning, where you're going through like all the stuff that's been happening in the early 80s, right? All these events. And the only thing that kept going through my mind the whole time was Billy Joel's song. We didn't start the fire, just kept that's all I could hear while I was reading those first 4 pages of Hollow Monsters. Like, that soundtrack just kept rolling in my head, and I was like, oh man, it was really cool. And then you get the turn page and it's like, this is the year, like with a 1982, and I thought that was great, like a lead into the story that kind of sets the stage. And
I think with some marketing, like if you learned how to market it right, I mean, I think it could be a hit, man, because like it's got that Daniel Clowes like charm to it a little bit, like with the British sensibility, maybe a little Morrison thrown in there, but I really dig what you're doing with it. There's a great sense of underlying dread during the whole book, like something horrible is going to happen and you're waiting for it. And I'm 2 issues in and like it's still, but like I still got that creepy feeling, you know what I mean, like for the shoe to drop. I really appreciate that about it. It never lets up on that tension.
That's good to hear. Thank you. Definitely people that have read it, like I say, there weren't as many people that read it as read Death Sentence, but people that have read it, they all say to me they want to see the next issue, and they're really into it. So it's good from that point of view. But I think especially with like COVID and all the sort of like effects that had on everyone's kind of finances and the world and everything, I just thought I just got focus on the things that people are actually buying.
Yeah.
So that was like, Death Sentence, and Death Sentence always sells like really well. It's just a really easy sell, and just sort of show it to people when they want to buy it, basically. Whereas something like Hollow Monsters is a bit more, it's a bit more of a connoisseur's kind of choice, sort of real kind of comic enthusiast kind of comic. And I think those things can go big if they've got good word of mouth, but I just didn't really have the time. Like, if you spend all your time writing and drawing comics, you don't really have a lot of time to do any publicity or anything. You just gotta like put them out. And I think with that, it was always my intention to sort of, put the issues out and then get a graphic novel together and then kind of really try and push it then, because I think that sort of book just definitely works well as a complete story. Like you say, a lot of people like to wait for every issue anyway. But the finances just weren't stacking up with that. I mean, I was making money out of it, but I wasn't making enough money out of it to sort of keep all the costs under control during COVID, and all the other effects that had on, like, my wife's income and the inflation that followed after that. You've just got to like concentrate on things that people are really, really buying in good numbers. And that's not to say that, I mean, there's nothing I'd rather be doing in the world now than this cyberpunk comic. It's just like, I'm totally obsessed by it. And like, I'm just loving every kind of detail about the world and the characters that I'm creating. And I'm getting the same kind of excitement and vibe from all these kind of characters that I'm making for that than I got off Death Sentence. And that was obviously a long time ago. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing it, is because I love all the design and the characters and the sort of concept and story of Death Sentence. But I did come up with it all quite a while ago now. And I just wanted to do something new and exciting and fresh and with a blank canvas that was just full of all the ideas that I had now and since then. That when you've got a book, you have ideas for it, but you kind of like, whatever your original restrictions on the world and everything, you have to respect those. So it's really fun doing something new where I can just totally any kind of great idea I can just incorporate it, because I'm still defining the world and defining how the story is going to play out and who the characters are. So I'm super, super excited by it. And it's just not quite ready. It's going to have to be another couple of months, I think, till I'm ready to show it to anyone.
Okay.
Is there going to be? Oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, go.
I was going to ask, is there going to be any carryover from Death Sentence? Like, is there the virus going to still be around in this new book?
Well, that's one of the key parts of it, is that obviously if you've read Death Sentence, you understand, the effect that the virus, pandemic sort of virus, has on the world. And then you're jumping forward 100 years. So what happens in those 100 years is people manage to get the virus under control using sort of biocybernetics. So they basically are all wearing this thing called a husk, which is kind of like a protective membrane that is breathable and kind of lets the sort of skin and body be healthy, but kind of stops any kind of virus or any kind of foreign DNA coded kind of like contaminant get into people's bodies. And as a result, they can then like have very sort of free and hedonistic kind of sex lives, because they're kind of like totally protected. But they're also like really insulated from each other in the fact that they're not actually touching each other properly in the sort of real sense, sort of skin to skin. And everything's kind of like enhanced using like apps. So all the sensations and so on are, enhanced in a way that is quite oppressive after a while, and kind of people are losing their humanity is really the part of it. And that's obviously kind of a little bit allegorical to the way the world is now, with the way everybody kind of conducts their relationships through apps and through social media and swiping right and things. And yeah, it's kind of like the monetization of people's kind of relationships really is what we're sort of seeing happening. And in the future, it's basically another of the rules of this society is you can't talk to anybody unless you've arranged it online or in an app beforehand, someone that you don't know, so for any reason. So it's kind of like in many ways it's a kind of very free society, and in many ways it's a very kind of restrictive and oppressive society. So it's very much a dystopian world, but I'm trying to do things that are just different to the things we always see in cyberpunk work, where there's always some like evil corporation and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, there's lots of interesting ideas sort of conceptually, but then also just like really fucking great kick-ass action stories that I've had ideas for over the last sort of 10 years that I've just jotted down and thinking like, oh, I'll do something like that one day. It's just a really good excuse to put them all in one place and have them all sort of tied together and make sort of like a sort of kind of complex narrative, bigger narrative out of them. So there's lots of just really great kind of detective kind of action, kind of murder mystery type stories that are all happening in the same place.
And you're going to tell this issue to issue?
Yeah, it'll be issue to issue initially. Yeah.
Because on your, if you like, people follow you on socials, you have the link for the Kickstarter launch page.
Yeah.
Notify me at launch, and here it says it's going to be over 500-page stories. So how many issues, and what are going to be the size of the issues you're planning on putting out?
Oh, right. Well, that includes, because it's part of the Death Sentence universe, that includes the original.
The original series, the other 3 series included with that. Okay.
Yeah. So no, I'm not going to wait until I've done 500 pages before dropping it, because it would be a long wait. But it's a very widescreen book. It's kind of very different to what we were talking about earlier with Hollow Monsters and also Death Sentence, in the respect that it's a very visually led, widescreen, kind of very visually kinetic book, where I'm just trying to put like spectacle on every page, and have like really interesting things happen within that spectacle, because it's you know what it's like when you get like a big spread across a comic, and there's just a lot for you to look at, and there's just a really interesting perspective view. It's effectively one panel, but within that one panel, because of the magic of comics, you can have all kinds of like action. You can have characters moving, in multiple figures across that page, doing all kinds of like storytelling and action, and it's very sort of satisfying for me to sort of do that kind of stuff. So it's similar to the Hollow Monsters page you were referencing earlier, but it's just in a very sort of much more kind of science fiction and kind of widescreen kind of style. Yeah.
So the visuals in this is going to be is it going to be a black and white book with like accents of color? Yeah, because from the sample pages that you have from your work in progress that you posted on socials, you see it's going to be like a black and white, but with like a lot of gradations, maybe washes and stuff like that, like from what I've seen on your pages. So it won't be just a hard black and white. Like you're going to have a lot of like gray scales and stuff like that.
There's a lot of airbrush. So obviously, I like with any sort of noir book, you want a strong black, and you want a lot of sort of silhouette and kind of bold, kind of like foreground, background kind of separations. But then I kind of work into that a little bit with midtones, and then I add basically another of the sort of concepts of the world is that the biotechnology in the buildings is kind of alive. So the pipes, and they look kind of more like roots, and they kind of move around a bit. And obviously, like all modern technology, it doesn't quite work as you'd wish. So there's a lot of kind of like fixing and sort of seepage and, you know, kind of like liquids kind of like splurging out and kind of like sort of vapor kind of like escaping from these kind of like living buildings. And like kind of real kind of like wiry nests that kind of like build up at the bottom of the city from all the roots of the buildings and things like that. So rendering all that is a lot of fun and gives you the sort of suitably original and cool kind of cyberpunky world, but with a kind of new twist on it. So I conceived the whole thing in sort of like different shades of grey, and then with flashes of like different kind of colours of neon blue luminescence to sort of like highlight certain things and to give it some sort of unique sort of feel and kind of the lighting. I think that kind of glow you get from the shadow is very important in this kind of work, and the different shades of blue just really works really well for it. And again, it's something I can do very easily hand drawn, because blue is a color where you get a very wide spectrum of kind of differences between, like, say, an aquamarine and a sort of like deep kind of like royal blue. So it's quite easy to do that in a hand drawn way. And get consistency with the colors that are acrylics and the colors that are inks. And then having done all that, I kind of like prepared it all like that. And then I just had this sort of like crisis of confidence, thinking, oh, Jesus, what if this is just something no one's interested at all? So I colored up some of it just to see, well, can I color this? You know, is it something that's colorable? And it is, you know, you can basically make it look like the whole thing was supposed to be in color from the start. So that's, I think just knowing that kind of made me feel a bit easier. And then I'll probably do some color covers. So basically the main core book will be purely in like gray and blue. And then I'll probably do some of the covers that will be in sort of color. That's one of the colorized covers. So people can, if they want, get like a full color kind of cover on their comic, and there'll probably be some full color prints as well, because I think it's quite interesting to see it in color sometimes. But basically, the vision of it and the main kind of like levels that you'll be able to buy on the book, it'll all be monotone and blue.
Yeah, but it looks fantastic from what I've seen on what you've shared on socials, like the artwork for it, like the cityscapes and that you were working on, where you were doing the video for your airbrushing and stuff. Like, all that looks fantastic. I mean,
yeah. Thanks.
You have that,
Thanks.
You also have that one for your launch page too, where it's an action sequence, and that looks really good too. So I mean,
sweet, yeah.
It's visually, it's a beautiful book from what I can tell from the work so far, you know.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, that's the intention. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it and committing all this time to it unless I didn't believe, you know, that was the case. But at the same time, I think you're only human if you don't sometimes question yourself and think like, am I wasting my time here? You know, basically the nature of my work is I basically sit in a room on my own, coming up with ideas and then realizing them over a period of months into like a new world and comic book and so forth. And then I kind of reveal it to people. And at that point, they might all say like, what the fuck is that? Why are you doing that? You know, and I think especially when you've invested the amount of time I have in this, you want to be sure that it's something that people are going to in some way interested in. So I did put a few different images online, just sort of seeing what people thought of it in grayscale and blue, and what people thought of it in color, and so on and so forth. But you can tell from the videos that the entire thing's being hand drawn in grayscale, and that's really enough. People loved the grayscale, or just weren't that bothered. You know, they thought they were both good. That it made me think, this is I can keep on doing this. It's going to work. I think enough people will like it that I can. Basically, all I'm ever looking to do is sell enough copies that I can make the next issue. So as long as I can do that, I'll be happy.
Well, I think it's a great alternate take within that that death sentence universe that, you know, because it's already a pretty expansive story with three different, like with the original, you have London and Liberty, right? So I
Yeah.
think this is definitely something that'll change it up enough, but still have that same core idea of like a virus or whatever with the conflict and the action sequences. So I think it'd probably just be a breath of fresh air for people to get something that's familiar yet definitely is new at the same time, right? So I
That's
think
the
it's a
idea.
great idea. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So when do you think you'll be launching the Kickstarter? Do you have an idea in mind, or you're still a little too far away from
Well, one of the things, because I've always been working sort of hand to mouth. I need to get books out on a certain schedule in order to keep making them. One of the things that I wanted to do with this was actually, for the first time, kind of be able to set up a Kickstarter and have a page, and then kind of just, I haven't actually promoted it at all. I've just made the page and put a link on my social media kind of platforms. At some point, I should probably send the link out to people. Like, I haven't even sent it out to my mailing list yet, which is kind of crazy. So I mean, it's still got. I mean, there's enough. There's people ticking over on there every sort of week. It sort of builds up slowly, but I haven't done any kind of promotional publicity for it at all. So the idea is that I'll start to do some sort of pre-publicity for it, and then people will hopefully kind of like follow the page in anticipation of it coming out. And then when it does launch, it'll do okay, so that we can keep making more of them. So that's the plan. And then as to when it's coming out, like I say, I've got to be 100%. I don't like launching anything I'm not happy with. So I've got to be 100% happy with everything, and I'm not at the moment. You can't really talk about things sensibly when you keep changing the name of it. So that's one thing. And then I've been working on, like with Hollow Monsters, like we said, that's very kind of 80s based, and it's kind of, I like understanding things. So obviously it's nostalgia, a lot of it about your childhood, but I like understanding what was the actuality of the world in the 80s compared to what everyone's kind of rose-tinted view of it is now. So that there was quite a lot of research that I did at the time into, like, the news, like you said, that sequence, the news for the time, and it's really eye-opening, what was going on in the world and how scary the world was then, with the threat of nuclear war and a lot of wars in the Middle East and terrorism, and people's perception of it was different then because they got their news in a different way. And there wasn't social media, and there wasn't, the phones that are constantly, beaming all the latest developments to people all the time. So people's perception was very different of the world. But the world itself was probably even more dangerous than it is now, in the fact that for most of the 80s, it looked like we could get blown up at any point, with a nuclear war. Plus, there was like really bad terrorism in the UK and with the IRA, and also across the world with sort of Middle Eastern terrorists and so on. So it was really interesting, like, finding out about that stuff and understanding it a bit more. But then that led me to sort of get really interested in like all kinds of things to do with the 80s. And one of my hobbies. One of the things that I just post about when I'm waiting for like a file to load up or something is I just love posting about or finding out about old chocolate bars and sweets and biscuits and things like that, because it's just like something fun and harmless that I'm not going to have a row with anybody about, that you can talk about online, and that makes a nice kind of relief from all the other shit that you're constantly sort of doing online. So I've been doing that for years. Ever since I've been online, it's probably been one of the main things that I kind of like chunter on about, and that's led to me basically writing a book about 80s sweets and chocolates, and I wasn't really trying to write a book. I like understanding things. I like writing them down, mainly because I haven't got a particularly great memory. So if I don't write them down, I can't, remember them later or refer to them when I'm trying to figure something out. So eventually I sort of looked at all these notes and I thought, this is actually just a book. This would be a really good book because I've got so much information about, and online people aren't really interested in all the detail of it, and the sort of, the minutiae and the sort of behind the scenes stories, because they just want to say like, oh yeah, I remember that bar, that was like amazing, I remember being little and stuff. They don't want to get into all the stuff that would make a book great. So I've just been putting all this kind of information in a book, and I'm going to do the book probably in the next month or so, bring that out, and then while that's happening, I'll be fine-tuning the cyberpunk kind of like covers and the final kind of like details of that. And then, I'll probably do it in that order. I'll do the 80s book first, and then I'll do the cyberpunk book after that.
So it's going to be about like candies that were around in the 80s that aren't around anymore, or just like all
yeah. There's lots that everyone remembers from that era, that they can't get anymore, and they're kind of like, they're really sad about it. But often there's like really entertaining stories as to why those bars disappeared, or not all quite alarming ones as to what was actually in them and why they don't taste like that anymore. So it's been quite funny talking to a lot of the people in the sort of chocolate business and all the kind of, because they take it deadly seriously, like the rivalries between like Mars and Roundtree back in the day was deadly business. So it's been really interesting sort of hearing all the behind the scenes sort of stuff, but it's really from the point of view of just like kids, us kids that were going into shops, and it was like a golden age for chocolate back then. There was so many developments in like the wrappers and the flavors and the kind of combinations you could get. So there's loads that people remember disappearing, but then there's loads more that people never remember until they actually see one, and then they're like, oh god, man, yeah, I'd totally forgotten about that one. And I've been like I say, I've been writing this down for years, but I still find bars that I had either forgotten that existed or I didn't know they existed at all, but a lot of people have very fond kind of memories of them, because it often depends on what region you're in and what kind of what your local shop kind of just stocked, because especially when you're a kid, you don't tend to roam that far to get your chocolates and sweets and things. You tend to get them from the same shops, so you can quite often just completely miss some bar that everyone else is completely wild about that never came to your area. So it's quite fun. It's a really fun book, and very enjoyable. It's a lot easier to write than doing a comic. When I do a comic, I just put it's almost like a sort of, it's as much a sort of physical and mental kind of odyssey as it is, people always say it's a labor of love, and it is, but it takes a real toll on your body, sitting there for all those hours, drawing every page, by hand, and doing this book in my spare time. It's just a lot of fun, and it's a lot easier, and really enjoyed it.
Is this gonna? Do you already have a deal in place with a publisher? Are you going to kickstart it, or is it going to be just a digital book, or what's the plan for the release of that?
I have talked to a publisher about it, because I have quite good relationships with a couple of publishers that have published my books in the past. But what I find is whenever you start talking to a publisher, it always starts to come down to like, well, it would sell more if you kind of changed the focus so it wasn't just 80s bars. It would, if we did this price point and did this paper, we'd make more money per issue, etc., etc. And as I said, I just want a really cool book to put on my shelf behind me that I'm really proud of. So it's going to be like primo quality hardback cover, primo quality printing, paper, stock, and then it's purely going to be about the sort of 80s bars that I remember and know about. So I'm not expanding it beyond that. And there's no other book like that, because all the sort of books there aren't that many books about old chocolates, but those that do exist, they tend to be just about the history of the whole kind of industry, or they tend to be from the point of view of the manufacturers. Whereas this is much more the point of view of like from the kids that were buying the stuff and how exciting it was, and all the adverts that went with it, and the packaging, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's I think it's always better to publish it yourself first, make it really, really something you're proud of. And I tend to find that once you've done that and people see that people want that, then it's much easier to get a good deal, a favorable deal with a publisher after the effect. Especially when they're interested in the broad concept of it. So yeah, we've got a few. I've had a few conversations, but yeah, I'm definitely going to do it myself first.
And will it be mainly focused on, let's say, candy from the UK, or is it more of branching out like worldwide? Like,
initially it's going to be very UK based, because, like I say, that's my area of expertise. Yeah. So there could be one on American sort of chocolates later, but I really love the UK kind of stuff. So, and it's kind of like peculiar. We have a very peculiar relationship in this country with chocolates and biscuits. Kind of like even now, when people talk about it, they tend to use language that is kind of like a hangover from World War II. And I think because after the war, for a long time, like my parents, they would never be able to get a good supply of chocolates or biscuits because there was real sort of shortages and things after the war, even worse than during the war, for a long, long time, and rationing carried on. So that kind of carried over to my childhood, in that even though there was like loads of like chocolates in every shop, I was only allowed 1 bar a week. So
that was a real treat, right? So you had to choose very carefully which one you picked. Yeah,
it was really exciting. And then I would often, this is one of the funny things that I write about, I would often make a bar of chocolate last a week, and I'd sort of just like nibble it, and then I'd sort of put it in its wrapper, and I had all these techniques, and certain bars you can do this with because they've got a really, like the old double decker had a really hard kind of like base which had like cornflakes and raisins in it. They changed the recipe later, but and on that was like a nougat, a bit like a sort of Milky Way, and then around that was the chocolate. And because of anything with that sort of hard base, I could just sort of like use as sort of like a sort of stable kind of plate, and I would just literally, I'd have that by the end of the week. It was disgusting. It was all covered in saliva and all kind of nibbling chocolate out the packet and stuff, but I'd have it stored in my room somewhere and just sort of like nibble bits of it until I could get my next chocolate bar. So, and I've understood now that's actually quite weird. Most people didn't do that. Most people just ate the damn thing and then got on with their life.
That takes it takes a lot of restraint and discipline to do that as a kid, though.
Yeah. Well, I only had at that stage, I was only getting like 10p pocket money, and then later on it was 20p. So, nowadays, I mean, I still try. Nowadays, you got to watch all the calories, haven't you? Because you're older. So I still try and make chocolate bars last, but it just doesn't happen. I'll just suddenly just get a craving, and I'll just polish off a family bag of Rebels, same as everybody else in the world.
Yeah, you get that one. Oh, just one more. It was just one more. The bags weren't half done. I can't leave a half bag. Then, you always find ways to justify to keep going at it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I think if you're going to be addicted to something, chocolate is probably a good bet.
Yeah. There's some good chocolate out there. What's the big chocolate in the UK? Like, what's considered one of the better ones?
Oh, okay. Well, the favorite chocolate bar most people have from their youth is called a Texan bar, which was characterized by a very laconic cowboy he would always kind of like get into some sort of pickle, and then he'd pull out his Texan bar and then chew it very, very slowly, and then he'd sort of like, he was kind of like a Clint Eastwood character, and then he'd sort of like dispatch his enemies and carry on eating the bar. That's the one that's most missed in the UK. Traditionally, the favorite chocolate in the UK is dairy milk, which is
Dairy milk. Yes,
it's a lot sweeter than chocolate in Europe or America. But there is great consternation in the fact that Cadbury's were bought by Kraft, and Kraft have changed the recipe. And honestly, people couldn't be less happy about anything. The fact that the recipe has changed slightly, and it does taste different. And I don't eat it anymore, and nor do a lot of people. It's a national tragedy, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can understand that when you get used to something and then they change the recipe for.
Brits don't, and the UK, they don't stand for it. I remember when they were going to change the Toblerones a couple of years ago. You guys were going to riot, man.
Yeah. It's a big deal. Like I say, if you want to understand British people, understanding our relationship to chocolate and biscuits is a good way to do that, and it's a way for people to kind of unlock memories from the past as well, because obviously your taste and your smell is very, very, very much linked to memories you had as a child. So
yes,
it's also a good way just to talk about how the world was compared to how it is now, and using chocolate as like a sort of a fun way to sort of to do that.
It's a nice nostalgic lens, I think. I haven't thought about it looking at the past through chocolate, but yeah, that's got a nice poetic thing to it.
But yeah, I think you could do that with maybe not just chocolate, but any kind of food, right? Like anything that has to do with food will definitely, especially from your youth, you'll eat it and you'll get flooded with memories of like maybe your mom or your grandmother or like whoever made those some of your favorite meals, right? You'll always think about them when you eat it, and usually it's always good, fond memories. So
it's very powerful. Very powerful.
So I think that's why people have an emotional attachment to food, and why when they're in distress and stuff, they turn to food often. When you say stress eating, or you're depressed or happy, or it's like, oh, let's go out and get a bite to eat, like celebrate. It's always, food is a very, very cornerstone, I think, of every culture, and every culture celebrates it almost in the same way. I think that's one of the common threads we have, regardless of your background or culture. I think food plays like one of the most important aspects in all cultures. So I think we all celebrate it the same way.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a very fun book to read, but it definitely touches and brings in, like you say, some quite deep emotions into the sort of fabric of it, for those reasons that you outlined. So from that point of view, it's just a very rewarding thing to have worked on, I think. I've really enjoyed doing it.
Now I'm super interested in it. I can't wait till you launch your Kickstarter for it. It'll be interesting to see all these. I love that kind of stuff. It's interesting, like you said, just to go back. Like people often post stuff on socials, like who remembers this from their youth, and then you'll see the thread just explodes, right? People just commenting and so
There's a lot of funny stories. There's a lot of funny stories as well, because it just brings back anecdotes and funny things that happened related to those days. So it's a nice counterpoint. A lot of what I do is certainly the way I approach it. I tend to be quite serious and meticulous. So for me to just do something fun like this is really, it's good for me kind of mentally. But also it's definitely, whenever I talk about it online, I get like, I don't know, 10 times more responses than I do to any of my comic stuff, my comic posts, which obviously, because it's not the thing about the online world is it's not value. You don't get responses based on the value of the time or the skill that you put into something. It's not that kind of world. So yeah, like you say, it's just a fun thing. It's really nice to be able to post and work on something that's purely fun. And sometimes people do try and argue with me about chocolate bars, but I'm just like, nah, I'm not going there. I'm just not going there. It's like
you could find someone to argue about anything really on social
yeah,
media. So
yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, we've all got our own. I think that's the great thing. I think people will be happy to acknowledge that your tastes and my tastes in chocolate bars are completely different, and that's fine. But they won't. You know, if you're talking about any other subject in the world, they won't concede that. They won't. It always has to be one of us is completely right or one of us is completely wrong. At least on social media, which is kind of yeah, it's just not realistic, is it?
Yeah, like everyone has their things that are like particular to their region, or you know, where like Australians has their Vegemite. I never developed the taste for that. I've tried, and I just never could develop a taste for it. So
yeah. I remember the first time I went to Australia. I got invited to a Comic Con in Melbourne, and I was having a bit of banter with some Australians about how penguins were better than Tim Tams because they're basically very similar biscuits, but you know, we grew up with the penguin over here and they've got the Tim Tam over there. So when I got over there, it was quite funny because they know that I like my biscuits and my chocolate. The organisers in my room, they put like 6 packets of Tim Tams and like a load of beers, which is like happy days. You know, they're obviously they know who they're dealing with. So I had a few beers and I ate a lot of these Tim Tams. And I had to concede they are actually better than the British penguin. Yeah. So I do have an open mind on these things. It's just like, you know, it is what it is. The Australian Tim Tam is a better biscuit than the British penguin. I'm happy to confirm that.
We can if we get too much backlash, we can go and edit this part out if you want.
I'm happy to stand by it. It's a delightful biscuit.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. So Johnny, what do you have anything else you want to touch on that you want to discuss?
Yeah, I wanted to ask around when do you think that big collected version of Death Sentence will be being released?
The Titan one?
Yeah.
Yeah, the plan, this is all very much up to Titan, because obviously when you do a deal with a book publisher, they're then in charge of, you know, that side of things. I've been working on it for a while. I've been providing material for it. The last conversation we had, I believe they were going to launch it in the summer. And I think the idea was to have it be precisely on the anniversary of the very first issue of Death Sentence. So that's probably, from memory, that's sort of late summer. But then also, I think they need to factor in like San Diego and things like that. So they haven't 100% confirmed, but it will be basically kind of late summer that it'll be out, I think.
I can't believe that it's been since 2013 when Death Sentence originally first came out. That makes me feel old as hell because I remember getting the first issue of it at my shop and shit. Just looking at Verity and like, yeah, man, this book looks awesome, you know. So I picked it up and man, I cannot believe it's a decade ago. God.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how quickly that's gone. Especially as obviously, as you might know, the whole reason I did the book was because like I was going to be a dad and I wanted to do a comic book, you know, before we had our baby. Because as I said at the beginning, I imagined it would be something that I'd never be able to make a living at. So I just wanted to do it and then kind of like concentrate on things that were more like looking after the family and stuff. But then as it turned out, the surprise was that the book did well enough that I could just keep doing it, you know, for a living. So it's very much tied up with like, you know, the birth of my daughter and her life as it's developed over the last 10 years. which has been like a joy. Obviously, you know, fatherhood. It's been a wonderful journey, a wonderful thing to experience. And yeah, now she's obviously a very different person. It's a very different world. And that's why I want to do like a very different book with this cyberpunk book, because I just think the world's changed, I've changed, and it's time to just bring like a lot of exciting new ideas to it and take it to another level, really. So yeah, I'm really enthused by that. Yeah, it is crazy that it's been 10 years. I mean, I remember when the book came out in comic shops. I spent ages ringing all the comic shops in America, or as many as I could find, and like, you know, telling them about the book and explaining the book. And some of them told me to get lost. But a large number of them were quite receptive and said they sort of like check it out, because obviously then I was completely unknown as a comic creator. So if you can persuade someone to just take a look at it, and then when they take a look at it, it's good. As you said, Johnny, it's sort of like you've got to have that image straight away that you see it and you think like, oh yeah, that looks cool. And then you open it and then you look at the first page and you read maybe a few panels and you think, oh yeah, this is cool. So it's kind of like incremental like that. You have to sort of, when you're trying to persuade people that don't know who you are to buy your comic book, you have to make sure everything is on point and really kind of exciting. So yeah, it was quite a battle back then to just get anyone to look at it, let alone, you know, buy it and read it. So I remember giving them out. I remember like handing out copies in Comic Cons, and literally like 90% of the people would just like put them straight in the bin or throw them away. If you'd find them on the floor like afterwards, so it was really depressing, really depressing. But it's really just about, yeah, what I realized from that is like, don't hand out comics for free to people at Comic Cons, because people, if you do that, people just assume it's some free cheap shit. So they don't look at it. And that's when I decided, oh, okay, I have to do some sort of deal with a publisher. I have to get it into comic shops so that people actually, you know, treat it with some sort of like, you know, interest. But it's a real battle. It's probably harder than ever now to get, you know, your own comic kind of made, create your own comic made and out there. I mean, in some ways it's easier because like, Image is so well established, but I think the trouble now is that so many people make their own independent comic books that it's very hard to get any kind of like traction or publicity for what you're creating, especially if it's like the first thing you've ever done. So
there is so much stuff out there right now. So yeah.
I really feel for anyone that's just starting out, trying to sort of make their own book. I try and be as helpful as possible. I try and, you know, whenever I go online, I try and like tweet out other people's books and kind of support other creators, because I just know how hard it is, man. I know how hard it is to make this stuff, how much effort you put into it. Even if the comic book isn't very good, it's still like, you know, a hell of an effort just to get it out there. So I always give people respect and try and like share the sort of the love around, as far as, you know, getting eyes on things and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely a tight community, right? The comics community, for the most part, like you see it, that you prop each other up. The creators often propping each other up, and I mean, it's nice to see that. Like, it's not cutthroat where you're trying to put each other down. Like, especially on the Kickstarter front, a lot of creators are very apt to help each other out and give each other tips, and it's nice to see people working together instead of, you know, separate themselves like against each other, or trying to you know, buy into that, like, you got to get up on the other person, so you know, you try to put them down so you can prop yourself up. It's not like that at all with the crowdfunding scene, which is very nice to see.
Yeah, it's one of the things I like about it. It does tend to be very supportive, and you have a lot of good conversations with other creators. There's a lot of like comradeship in the scene, and I find that with the local Comic Con scene as well. It's just like a really good vibe, and like everyone's very sort of friendly and supportive, and like helping each other, and both the people that come to the cons and the creators at the cons are very sort of accepting and supporting of each other, which is great. It's really great to see comics have become this force across the country now, where you can go to any sort of small town and you can do a comic con and or do a comic event, and like people will come out and really get into it and dress up and really enjoy it, and feel like very relaxed and happy while they're there. And it's just really great to see. I usually just sit there sort of doing sketches for people and finding things if they want a book or something. But I really enjoy it. I'm going to one tomorrow, which is the first time I've been to the West Coast, because I'm on the East Coast over here. So I'm going over to the West Coast and doing a Comic Con over there, which is the first time I've been to the West Coast for a long time. So I'll be and I've had quite a few messages already from people, saying like, "Oh, brilliant! Are you going to bring Death Sentence? Are you going to bring Hollow Monsters?" Because like they don't have an opportunity to buy it over there, or to sort of get a signature or a sketch off me or anything. So I really enjoy the whole thing. I enjoy driving over there. I just enjoy sketching. It's great sketching when you're sketching live, because you can't think about it. You don't, when you're at home, you sort of sweat over all the details and you think, oh, could this be better? And maybe I need to do it like this. When you're sketching live, you can't do that. You just got to get on with it and give it to someone. And then
instinctive, right? It's just
and it's really good for you to sort of do that, because it reminds you that if you just stop over analyzing and draw, it'll actually just be fine, and you can do good stuff without sort of minding about all the details. So it's really, I think drawing live and meeting people at cons is a very good thing for you as a creator, as well as just being like a good way to sort of meet people and sort of publicize your books and stuff.
Do you still do a lot of cons, or?
Yeah, I do, but it tends to be, since I'm a family man now, it tends to be like I don't want to go away from home overnight unless there's like some really, really good reason. Okay. So like I say, I did this con in Melbourne because they paid for 5 nights in a 4-star hotel and flights there and back, which it's like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Yeah,
but unless there's some sort of deal like that on the table, then I'm not going away overnight. So I tend to do ones where I can sort of get there and back in a day. And obviously, UK is a small country, so it's pretty easy to do that.
Well, that's good that you have the option to do that, and that the smaller cons actually work out really well.
Yeah, they do. It's great because with the smaller cons as well, you're meeting people that don't normally go to a comic sort of thing. So you're always meeting new readers and like kind of getting them into like comics, or in a way, you always feel like a sort of responsibility to sort of represent the whole medium rather than just your own books. So you sort of say, what are they into? And if they're not into anything like you're doing, you just say like, oh, well, you might love this, or this guy over there, he's doing that kind of work. You should go and check out his book. All that kind of stuff. So it's just great to see the love from when I was little. The love for comics is so universal now across kind of society, in a way that it really was a niche thing when I was a kid to be into comics. So that's really great.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. All right. We've been talking with Monty Nero. He is the writer-creator of Death Sentence. There's 3 books for that. If you haven't checked it out yet, I highly recommend getting right into this book. It's a lot of fun. I don't want to call it a superhero book, but like I guess you can kind of consider it one. More like a reluctant people with powers having to do good book, which makes it a lot of fun. You can get all 3 books right now, or you can wait a couple months and for the compendium to come out or sometime next year, I'm guessing, from Titan. That should be really rad. And if you want more Monty Nero, I'm pretty sure you could get a hold of him and he's got Frenemies, he's got Hollow Monsters, he's got quite a bit of other stuff that he's worked on over the years. Also, he's done a few things here or there. He's written Hulk. He's written X-Men. He did a Vertigo book, one shot, I believe, right?
Yeah, the whole Vertigo thing is quite a story because I actually did a whole series for them, but because of the what we were talking about earlier with the contracts and the deal and stuff, it ended up with the book not coming out. So and that was really the last time I was interested in sort of like doing a so-called creator-owned deal with a big publisher because it wasn't a creator-owned deal. When we got down to the detail and the actuality of it, it wasn't a creator-owned deal at all. It was a pretend creator-owned deal. So I think a lot of deals out there are that kind of deal where it might appear to be one thing, but actually the company involved basically, in effect, controls the rights and any sort of what they tend to be interested in is they're very focused on TV and movies. And they just basically, what I realized was happening after I worked on it for about a year and a half. What I realized was happening was they were basically just using me as cheap labor to create a TV show for them, for Warner Brothers. And I just thought, well, if that's the goal here, then the recompense that I'm getting for that is not, appropriate to, what they're trying to actually do. Because they were literally like running the scripts and the concepts past TV people before we'd even got a book out. I just thought this is crazy. So there were all kinds of sticking points with that kind of behind the scenes, and in the end, we just decided that I would rather not do it, mainly because they wanted to make so many changes to what I'd originally pitched in order to make it more marketable for TV and film. And to me, that's not the point of a comic. The point of a comic is to exploit the marvelous, magical things you can only do in comics.
The medium itself, yeah.
Yeah, if you do that really well and it's a really popular book and everyone loves it, then you can start to think, oh, maybe there could be an adaptation that will be different, but we'll build on what everyone loves about this book. But yeah, to me, for that to be successful, you have to respect the core of the vision for the book in the first place. So it all just seemed to be just not something that I needed to be involved with. So that's how that ended up. And then since then, like I say, I've been much happier just kind of developing comics myself, doing them in ways that kind of work for me and get me excited, and then once you've sort of demonstrated that they're popular and they're good, then it's much easier to do a good deal that, like I said, everybody's happy with, everybody profits from after the effect. So that's what I'd recommend to any kind of creator. It's basically, it all comes down to the work, doesn't it? If the work's good, you haven't got any problem.
Yeah.
So if the work's not good, then that's when things get tricky. So just concentrate on the work, concentrate on making that really amazing, really original, really interesting, and then everything else will follow from that. You'll be in a much better position to negotiate with companies when you've got something really hot than if you're just sort of like, trying to follow the crowd or trying to mimic something that was popular last year or something like that. So that's the way I view it all.
Well, that's too bad that like experiences like that. I'm sure a lot of people have experiences like that, and it kind of, instead of like being like, I don't need it, I'll just do it myself. Like some people probably let it discourage them and just give up on comics altogether. But it's nice that you're like, screw it, I'm just going to do my own thing and I'll forget publishers. And then once you have that thing, like you said, created and it's done and it's a living thing, then you can shop it around because it's already a fully formed idea. It's out there, and then anything they'd change after would probably just be very minor, small tweaks, if anything, not anything major. So yeah.
Well, that's something you can put in your contract. You can say, look, I'm going to deliver you the comic, you publish it. The deal I have with Titan is like they can publish it or they can not publish it, but they can't tell me to change anything about it. So that's a good deal for me. That works for me. So happily, that so far they've always wanted to publish it in various formats and stuff. So that's good. But yeah, it's also risky because like you could spend potentially time working on something and then no one buys it and no one wants it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it was bad, because often things that are fantastic or groundbreaking that I see other creators put out don't find the audiences that I feel they deserve, because maybe they're a bit ahead of their time, or and that's a real phenomenon. So yeah, there's no magic recipe that you can use to kind of make a successful comic. All you can do is just treat the whole process with integrity so that you're happy that it's the best thing it could possibly be, and then whatever happens to it, sink or swim, you can just hold your head up high and said, well, I'm proud of that work. It's good. And if you get a lot of satisfaction out of meeting people that really loved something that maybe it wasn't the biggest hit in the world, but they really, really thought it was a special comic. I feel like there's comics I can remember reading like in the late 80s and stuff that had a really big effect on me, and they're not necessarily huge comics or anything, or greatly remembered issues or anything, but they just really they still live in my mind as powerfully as any kind of fiction that I've ever read. And I think comics has that power. I think there's something about the simplicity of the images and the words together that it really gets to the sort of deep part of your brain that sort of really sort of affects you, and it really stays with you. It's sort of like a very powerful storytelling mechanism, I think. Really, really kind of underrated even now.
Well put for sure. Like, I think that's good advice for anyone that's doing anything in a creative field, right? So
yeah, and the way the world's gone generally, I think it's a lot easier now with the internet, social media, the sort of mechanisms you have to sort of transfer money across continents using PayPal or whatever. It's a lot easier now if you're doing any kind of art to find an audience for some weird thing that you're into that other kind of weirdos are also into, and you can just make a go of something now just from your home in a way that you couldn't even 10 years ago, because it was impossible to reach out and find those people, or it's very difficult to find those people, or to make it cost effective to actually get it to them. So I think all kinds of artists, artisans, creators, craftsmen, it's a lot. The way to go is to just make your own unique stuff, and then to try and find your audience yourself. And if you do that, you can actually do a lot better than if you're trying to go through a big company that used to control the kind of channels of distribution, but they don't so much anymore.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, Johnny, what were you? You mentioned Vertigo, and then did you have anything else you wanted to talk about after that, or?
Yeah, I was gonna ask Monty to let the people know where they could find him online. Like, what are his?
Okay, so the best way is just to all my social media, whether it's like Facebook or basically every platform. It's always Monty Nero, MONTYNERO. So it's very easy to sort of find me from that point of view. And then there tends to be links in the profile of everything that I'm doing, and there tends to be some sort of way you can message me either on the platform or by a link to somewhere else, like where you can send me a message on a website or email or something. So I've also got a mailing list which is on MailChimp. So if you go to Monty Nero, if you just Google Monty Nero MailChimp, you'll probably find that. And again, the link for that, there's a Death Sentence Facebook page. I think the link for that's on there as well. So there's all kinds of different ways you can find me online, and you can find links to the books and the forthcoming sort of campaigns. And then, like everybody, whenever I do a campaign, you tend to be able to, at some point in that campaign, buy my other books if you want to. So yeah, that's the way to do it these days, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I would just and don't forget, if people are on the west coast of the UK, you're going to be at a convention tomorrow. So anyone around, I don't remember what the convention's called, but they could go pick up some books from you there as well.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, man. It's been great talking to you, and I love that video. Can you send me that video or something? I mean, I thought that video.
Yes, we can. We can definitely send it to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah. And I've been craving a candy bar now for the last 40 minutes. So
yeah,
that's the first thing. When we get offline, I'm gonna go eat a candy bar.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So thanks again for coming on. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and good luck on all your future endeavors. And looking forward to the Titan hardcover release of the collected edition, and very much looking forward to your candy bar book and the new chapter in the death sentence story, which will be the cyberpunk story. So awesome things coming, and really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, dudes.
We're going to be back on Sunday night. We're going to be kicking off the spooky season, talking about the movie Talk to Me. We're going to have some guest stars on, our guest hosts on. We're going to talk about that wonderful Australian spooky film. So see you guys then. Take it easy and have a wonderful weekend, party people.
Have a great weekend, everyone.